Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here, and welcome to my review of Doctor Who The Android Invasion, the fourth story of Doctor Who Season 13. And I have to say, guys, I don't actually have anything wrong with this story. Literally, I have no problems. There's a few tiny nitpicks. There's a scene in end of part 3 where the Doctor and Sarah Jane are in front of what looks like a blue screen, and it looks like a really dodgy blue screen of a rocket, and you've got some stock footage of a rocket taking off, like we had some stock footage of Egypt, and yeah, just some stock footage of Egypt in the last story, and probably a fire as well. Actually, no, I think the fire was a really cool effect in that one. Anyway, but yeah, it's just that's my only problem. But it's 1975, so they didn't have that great effects. Besides that, there isn't really anything I can complain about. This story just feels perfect. And that kind of scares me. I don't have a problem with this one. I mean, I don't think the story is amazing, but the way it's handled, this is where Revenge of the Cybermen failed. This execution just makes the story amazing. I don't really have any problems with it, apart from the fact that I don't have any problems with it. That kind of scares me in a way. So the plot is basically the Doctor and Sarah Jane land on what is supposedly Earth in the village of Devesham, which Sarah Jane previously visited on a story. And it takes them some time, but they discover it's actually a training ground for an invasion by the Kralls to the actual place on Earth, which we actually go to in episode 4. Actually, I do have a slight nitpick as well. I think part 3 they do kind of meander a little bit. They know what's going on. Well, they're starting to learn what's going on, but around midway through episode 3, it starts to kind of slow down, meander a little bit. But it's okay. It's not that bad. It's okay. It doesn't hinder the story. It's just a little bit of it just slows down, and it actually has some great moments in it. I generally love the mystery and setup that they have throughout part 1. Again, going back to Wheel in Space part 1, where just looking around, just investigating, can actually be interesting, can actually have some great moments. And it just works. Part 2 is also pretty good. Part 3, like I said, I think it meanders a little bit during that one, but it's still really good, and it's still really important to the story. And then part 4 is a pretty great ending. I will say the second half of the story is slightly weaker than the first, but the first one is just handled really well. And just, someone's buzzsawing next door, I think. By today's standards, the Krull masks may look a bit naff, but I think they're effective villains. I think they're good with what they've got to do, and the actors do a great job. Roy Skelton gets to play one of them, by the way. He's the not the main one, he's like the one the main one talks to quite often. And yeah, so they're actually decent. I mean, we don't get a huge amount of their characteristics, but they're still proven to be pretty decent. That being said, thinking about it, you could swap them with the Sontarans and you wouldn't really change that much besides the scientific angle. But that being said, I still think they're pretty workable villains. I think they work well. I certainly think they're more effective Sontaran-esque villains that can also stand on their own 2 feet than the Maya from Series 9. But they're really good. And Crayford, who is helping them as they trick him into thinking that they saved him from a damaged spaceship, but it turns out they just kidnapped him and tricked him into being part of their plans. He's really great. He's played by the same guy who played Bennick from Enemy of the World, who I mentioned in my Plans of Evil review. And he'll be back in Invasion of Time as another character, as one of the Time Lords. And he's really great here. He's got such a great performance in this one. He's really into his role. He's really into all his roles, to be honest. But this one is probably my favourite on a performance-wise. My favourite character of his is Bennick, but performance-wise, I think it's Crayford. It's just really great, and he comes off as a great secondary villain until the end, where he's realised he's actually been tricked and actually helped save the day really well. And even even as a villain, he still has some great moments. In part 3, where he's talking to the Doctor and Sarah Jane, he's so enthusiastic about the plan. He doesn't know the Trolls want to kill people. He's been tricked into thinking they're going to be not killing, basically. But he's so enthusiastic about the plan, it's impossible to not acknowledge his enthusiasm and his excitement. He's like a schoolboy explaining to people that he's done a really great job at school, or he's going somewhere really special for his summer holidays, and he's so excited. It's great performance. And speaking of great performances, Tom Baker and Elizabeth Sladen continue to be amazing as the Doctor and Sarah, plus their their android duplicates. It's really great. And that also, we get John Levine and Ian Marter back as Sergeant Benton and Harry for one last story. Although they don't appear in part 1, they do come. The android duplicates are in parts 2 and 3, and then the real cells alongside the duplicates are in part 4. So it's nice to see them one more time before they exit the series forever. Harry, this is certainly the last time. Benton, he would get his own spin-off direct-to-video film called Wartime in the 90s. I haven't seen that yet, so I can't comment. But as for appearing in the official show, this is it for him as well. Although Ian Marter would write a few more Target novelisations until his passing. Richard Franklin fans will be glad to know he's still got 2 more appearances to go, though, as does Nicholas Courtney, neither of whom appear in this story. Just wanted to mention that. The new general we do get in part 4 is also pretty decent. So it would have been nice if we had a few more unit stories and he might have come along in charge if the Brigadier was away. But well, he's decent for what he is here. And overall, I think it's just got some great stuff. And that unit soldier who we see, the android duplicate in part 4, he's basically the Irma Bunt of this story. Irma Bunt being a character from On Her Majesty's Secret Service, a James Bond film, and basically saying that he's got the face like he's been smacked, but it still looks pretty intimidating. He looks really, really annoyed most of the time, but he's still keeping his calm about him. I also like how in part 1 that we don't see the Krulls straight away. We see Crayford communicating with someone, and then in part 1 we see a glimpse of the creature. And then part 2, that's where we get introduced to it properly. That's actually pretty cool. You get to hold off on seeing what the monster actually looks like for another week, instead of having it revealed in the cliffhanger. And it's not a pointless cliffhanger, because it gets to see what Sarah Jane trying to rescue the Doctor. And I think Sarah Jane nearly sees it at the start of part 2, but it's never brought up again. But it still feels more pointful than, say, links to Sontaran removing his helmet, or Scaroff, or even more so, Scaroff in City of Death just removing the Count Scarlione's mask and then just darting his eye round to face the door, and then in part 2, the next time we see him, he's got the mask back on. Yeah, so it's more pointful than those ones, for example. So, yeah, on the whole, Android Invasion is just perfect. I don't know what it was, it just feels great. There's only those few nitpicks I mentioned earlier, and that's it. It's pretty much perfect. It's directed by Barry Letts, so it's of course going to look great. And it's written by Terry Nation. Sorry, I was about to say Terrence Sticks. That would be a great combo. Terrence Sticks and Barry Letts working together, this time making a story for someone else's era of the show. But Terry Nation, in his second and only other story that it does not feature the Daleks, the other one being the magnificent The Keys of Marinus. But yeah, he's just done a great job. And also, he had experience writing android duplicates, especially of a Doctor back in The Chase, and that one worked effectively for that amount of time in that story. This time round, he's managed to adapt it for a whole story, and it works. And yeah, it's just a really brilliant story. Terry Nation certainly is one of the show's best writers. I mean, there's only a few stories I don't really care for that's written by him, but most of them are amazing. Two of my favourites are Terry Nation stories. One of them almost hit the top 10, but doesn't quite. That was Genesis of the Daleks. Yeah, and other favourites include Daleks Master Plan, The Chase, Evil of the Daleks, and if I go to 9 out of 10s, Dalek Invasion of Earth, that's an amazing one. Power of the Daleks, I know that's not Terry Nation. And Planet of the Daleks was, not so much now. And I do have to say, I think Destiny of the Daleks, his last script, which is coming up in a few seasons' time, is one of his weakest, if not the weakest. It's that or Death to the Daleks. We'll see. And also, Keys and Marinus is another great one, as I mentioned. But I think this is possibly his best script, excluding Genesis of the Daleks, and maybe Master Plan. It's just absolutely perfect. I don't have anything wrong with it, apart from those few nitpicks I mentioned earlier. Very few, even less than Pyramids of Mars, or Terror of the Zygons, or Genesis of the Daleks. And even less than Ark in Space, one of my favourites of all time. I don't know how. I thought this story was not going to be as good as Pyramids of Mars. But, well, I think Pyramids of Mars is the strongest story. But this one just used to be a good, entertaining, fun story for me. But now I see it as a pretty much perfect story. It's just so well crafted and executed. And I think Barry Lett's direction just helps bring the story to life. So again, you've got a great story brought together by an amazing story brought to life more by amazing direction. Something season 13 has been doing superbly, apart from Planet of Evil. That was just a letdown, but the rest of them have so far been superb scripts with superb direction equals superb execution, superb stories, genuine classics. I'm starting to see why people are loving this season. I mean, I do see why. I did see before, but I'm starting to understand more than before why people are loving this season. Whether 14 is more popular, or 12, come to think that 12 or 14 is more popular, I'm yet to see. Personally, I think 13 is certainly a very strong season. Series 13 has a lot to live up to, doesn't it? We'll see how that happens in 2 years' time. But as for season 13, it's so far been absolutely brilliant, apart from that one massive stinker that was probably the worst story since the Space Pirates. But excluding that, the rest of them have been classics. So therefore, I'm going to give the Android Invasion, I was going to give it a 9 because it was too perfect. So there had to be a nitpick or two or an issue that I had that would not let it be 10 because it was too perfect. And that scared me a little bit, because no story is perfect. Even my all-time favourites, as I mentioned, Ark in Space, I had a few nitpicks with that one, but still. But I think I'm just going to have to suck it up and say I'm going to give the Android Invasion a 10 out of 10. I honestly don't have any problems with it, apart from that nitpick about the blue screen effect at the end of Part 3, but that can't be helped, it's 1975, so it's 1975 tech, it can't be helped that much. And maybe one or two other nitpicks I mentioned earlier, that's about it. It's actually really, really brilliant. So yeah, that's the Android Invasion, an amazing, amazing story, and made even more amazing by great direction. It's also got some really great location works and some great action scenes. Again, parts 1 and 2 more so than 3 and 4, but still, 3 and 4 are still really great. So that was the Android Invasion. Next time we'll be looking at another classic Doctor Who story, The Brain of Morbius. And yeah, I also like this one. I like this one. I don't know if I like it as much as Android or Pyramids or Terror, but it's certainly another brilliant one. Certainly, even if it gets an 8 out of 10, it's still going to be a very high in opinion. At least, certainly compared to what else we had this season. Oh, Planet of Evil, I keep having a go at you every single time. Yeah, I'm not sorry. So anyway, next time, The Brain of Morbius. And I'll see you guys then. Goodbye. forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel. And I like Benix. He's like a schoolboy, and he's like a schoolboy, yet also funny. The only thing is, I even like how in part... Next time, another Doctor Who classics. So that was the Android Invasion. Next time, we'll be looking at another classic story.